Hi, I'm Rick Reese. I'm a health coach with HMR, and joining me are Adam Witt, Kim Smith, and Tony Toledo to discuss phase 2 of the HMR program. So before we get into it, guys, to start, let's just take a minute to hear just a quick bit about each of you. You get a little bit of your time in the program, where you're from. Adam, you want to start?
Yeah, I am Adam Witt, a health educator here in our Advocate Aurora system, which extends from Wisconsin and Illinois. And I've been with the HMR program for, it's probably 6 years like this week. So
Wow,
I know I joined right before Thanksgiving 6 years ago. So happy to be here.
congratulations. That's
Yeah,
really
thank you.
great. Kim, how about you?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Smith. I'm with Sharp Steely in San Diego, and I've been with HMR for about 13 years now.
Fantastic. And Tony?
So my name is Tony Toledo, and I've been with HMR I just had my 20th anniversary last month, and I'm in Northern California at Palo Alto Medical Foundation.
Great. So a lot of old timers here, and I mean that in the best possible way. So this conversation really is the first of a series of videos that we'll be talking about phase 2 of the HMR program, what it is, why it's important, and many of the best strategies that people practice in phase 2 to successfully manage their weight over time. So let's get right into it, guys. People have a lot of questions about phase 2, and that makes sense because let's face it, it's not as simple and straightforward as phase 1 of the program is. So what do I mean by that? The nuances and the layers of phase 2. Kim, what comes to mind around what's different about phase 2 compared to phase 1 of the program?
That's a great question, Rick. I think with phase 2, there's more decision making. You have to make decisions around portion control and can I have this or do I not have this? In phase 1, it's decision free, and that's why it works. And it can be scary to transition to phase 2, especially when you're really successful in phase 1. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. We hear that a lot. People approach this with a lot of trepidation. Adam or Tony, anything else you would add about how phase 2 is different from phase 1?
I would just say flexibility. You got the heavy structure from phase 1, but there might be times during the week or a special occasion where having some more tools to work with might increase your confidence level going into that event and succeeding. So, so kind of a back forth, as Kim mentioned, there's some scary parts, but there's also some exciting parts with it too.
Yeah, I would agree. Tony, before I move on, anything you'd add about just phase 2 in the most broadest of senses here?
Yeah, I would just say it's where the rubber hits the road. It's where we get to real life and take so many great skills and tools and techniques from phase 1 and make it ours in P2.
Yeah, I like that. Ownership and sort of customizing the tools of the program for long-term success. Adam, I'm going to come back to what you said. On one hand, it's just phase 2 is so great because you have more food flexibility, more variety. But on the other side, you have more food flexibility and more decisions and more variety and more choices. And that can be scary, as you said, Kim. So of course, people have a lot of questions about phase 2. It really doesn't lend itself to a simple one-word answer. And that's really why we're doing this video and this series of videos. So here's a question that comes up a lot. We don't need to belabor it, but let's answer it. When do people or should people transition to phase 2? What might be happening in their experience in the program where it would be appropriate? Adam, I'll just come back to you. What scenarios come to mind around when it would make sense for someone to transition to phase 2?
That's a loaded question, and I could get in a downward spiral of all the routes, but I'd probably pick the most common that I see, and that's diet fatigue. Whether that's a couple weeks in and people are playing with recipes, but they're running out of ideas, or they don't feel as excited about the structure, and some people take it half a year and feel great with that structure. But more often than not, it might happen before they hit their goal weight that they just might need some more tools. So diet fatigue would probably be the biggest one that I see here in our program.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We shouldn't overlook that there are people that reach their weight loss goals, and then of course they would transition to phase 2. Tony, build on that a little bit. Just any reasons why people would transition to phase 2.
Yeah, in the old days, pre-pandemic, a lot of it had to do with trips and whether it was work or, fun stuff, travel, events, big events that were going on that they would maybe put their weight loss on hold and learn some skills to utilize, whether it's on a trip or travel, what have you. But that seemed really a popular reason here for us in the Silicon Valley area.
Yep, absolutely. We see that here in Boston as well.
Mhm.
Kim, anything else come to mind for you around when it might make sense for them to transition to phase two?
Absolutely. If you're finding yourself going out of the box a lot more, it's better to be in phase two and have the support around making the right choices of what to eat. So it kind of goes back to the diet fatigue that Adam said. And another thing that I would add is losing weight loss momentum. So you're in phase one and you're trying a bunch of different strategies, volume, blast plans, trying different things, and
Right.
it's just not working. You're not losing weight. So it's time to really protect that weight loss and try something new in phase two.
Yeah, I think we've all had that experience where people might try to hold on to being in phase one for too long when it really is more appropriate that they be expanding their box of healthy foods. It's just more compatible with where they're at mentally and maybe what's going on in their lives. So you can reach your goal weight, and of course you transition to phase two. You want to be sensitive to if you're losing motivation and momentum for working to be in the box, maybe your weight loss is slowing down. We have a saying at HMR, better early than late. It's better to transition into phase two with what momentum you have and really tackle phase two as you're gradually adding in new foods versus trying to squeeze too much out of your weight loss phase in phase one. One other practical thing, guys, I'm sure you've heard this too, which is phase two is less of an investment. It's not less, not as doesn't cost as much as phase one. You're eating other foods when you're out and about, so I would just throw that one in there as well. It's not quite as common as the ones we've already talked about, but it's worth putting on the table there. All right, so phase two. Let's get into what do we actually do in phase two. So broad conversation here. Who wants to start? As you're beginning phase two, is there something to really be considering as you make this transition?
I'll start.
Yeah, please do, Tony.
I think first and foremost, self-compassion. You have to grab that when you transition over. That is a absolute tool and skill to build and hone as you transition, because it is an individual experience, right? It's your own lab, it's your experiment. Yes, you have a guide by your side. You have your coach who's working with you to do a nice gradual transition that is methodical and careful and protective, but there will be bumps in the road. And I just think it's really important to go into that, because I think phase one may instill, of course it instills confidence and pride and you have momentum, but the humility that phase two can bring, if you're not ready to deal with the ups and downs, can be crippling. So I think going in, bring grace and self-compassion with you, because they're extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, phase one is somewhat unique, right? In general, you're motivated every week with some weight loss. And phase two, that's not necessarily going to be the case, though of course people can lose weight in phase two. But I like your term there, self-compassion. Another thought that comes to mind is it's very natural to judge oneself, particularly in this area of one's life. And it's hardly productive to do that. It's sort of like more important that you pick yourself back up and stay in the game and stay in action. Kim or Adam, what else, just as you're sort of helping someone to transition into phase two of the program, what are some points that come to mind that are important to share? Kim, why don't you start?
Okay. Yeah, for me, I would say it's really important not to open up your box too quickly. You know, it can be really, really tempting to say, oh, great, I just finished phase one, so I'm going to go out and have pizza and beer. You know, but I think that when you end phase one, it's really a vulnerable time to protect that weight loss, you know, so following that transition plan and slowly coming off the meal replacements as you introduce other foods is very, very important for success in phase two.
You almost can't make that point enough. Adam, expand on that just from your own experience. You've worked with so many people through the years here. Why is it important to have a slow, gradual, methodical transition into a wider variety of food choices, healthy food choices?
Yeah, Kim took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, don't bite off more than you can chew starting. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say that. But, you know, the decision making, which we all talk about, like, I think people have to understand you have entrees that you can eat in 1 minute. You know, and we all could say like, well, what are you eating for Saturday night? Well, it's going to be one of the HMR entrees if you're committed to being in the box. And when you open up all these decisions, you can't take a fresh chicken breast out of the fridge and throw it in the microwave and a minute later. And then what are you going to have with it? So when you slow down that process, it really allows people to introduce, okay, if let's use chicken as an example, that's one tool to work with, and it might be one meal of the week. And I think a lot of people can look at that and be like, I can do this, you know, as opposed to 10, 15 different foods and realizing, oh my gosh, like I went from heating up HMR entrees to now full blown trying to figure this out on my own. And we definitely don't want that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, another way that we could sort of describe this whole idea of a gradual approach is keeping up a lot of the phase one behaviors that you were practicing to lose the weight. Tony, speak a little bit about that. Why is it important to keep up? Obviously, you wouldn't scale back your exercise. You'd keep that in place. If you are already eating fruits and vegetables in phase one, you wouldn't drop those. If you're a decision-free client, someone who wasn't using the fruits and vegetables, you'd get your fruits and veggies up. Why keep phase one behaviors in place? How does that support people, just from your experience in working with people through the years?
Yeah, well, I would start off first with the commitment level first, right? So make sure you're still obviously record keeping, connecting with your coach, coming to class, all of those three things with the same level of enthusiasm or more, right? Because now we're getting to the real stuff. And so there's definitely that connection needs to be strong. And I would even say that along with that, if there is a change in coach, right? If you are transferring to another coach or another class, you have to allow yourself time to and patience to connect with both of those, your coach and new group, right? So there's a lot going on sort of under the surface there. But then from a behavioral standpoint, you know, these are, I always say, you know, dance with the one who brought you, right? Those behaviors, those weight loss behaviors need to stay up front and center and at a high level. They're our safety net, you know, our buoy as we start to figure out other behaviors. And those new behaviors, I love what Adam said about the chicken breast. You know, there's this, I think, fallacy that you could just plug and play these things, when in reality, there's a whole new set of skills to build. And so we have to be able to slowly and methodically build those while keeping so much of the basis, the foundation, the platform we've been successful with in place and intact.
Absolutely. Yeah, a safety net. You know, that's how I look at the phase one behaviors. And, you know, we are all, and we'll come back to this towards the end, and we are all essentially in phase two ourselves, which is at bottom, the practice, the ongoing practice of a healthy lifestyle, healthy diet pattern. But those phase one behaviors, I'll just speak personally for myself, they are my most decision-free food routines. They're most of them are, they represent most of my guaranteed low calorie food routines. And through time and experience, they're food routines I really love. Let's just pause on that point for a minute. Kim, can you just share, you know, your experience with practicing and keeping up phase one food routines and how that supports you personally?
Absolutely. For me, it's really important to keep up with the physical activity. And one thing I've learned for myself, weight management does not come easy to me in this program. And being a health coach really helps to keep me on track. And one of the things for me in phase 2 is making sure that I get up every morning and I do physical activity. Because if I plan it for later in the day, I've learned about myself that it might not happen. So, that's a non-negotiable for me to get up every morning and do some form of physical activity for at least 30 minutes. Most times I do an hour, but the other thing that I do is I like to have a shake for breakfast every morning.
Yeah, so clear phase 1 behavior that you're using as a tool in phase 2. Adam, I have this image when we had done a presentation nationally, and it was you had sent in a photo of you grilling veggies while you were camping. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit about your practice of any phase 1 behaviors that support you as part of ongoing weight management.
Yeah, and I think this is always good for patients or people that are doing the program to realize coaches are taking advantage of these tools, even if they were managing their weight before being part of the HMR team. And a lot of people I work with know that I was a personal trainer for 10 years prior to coming to HMR. And I could tell them the ridiculous food prep I would do on a Sunday night, meals on end, and one of the things that I've really embraced is the make no mistake, you have to work hard in this program. And I think a lot of people know hard work pays off. It takes a lot of work to be in the box. But as we talked about decision-free and meal replacements, there's nothing better to know that if I come into work that I can have an HMR entree. I don't have to create 21 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner throughout the whole week. I can rely on some of those easy wins. And that really streamlines a lot of the food prep that I do throughout the week. It's less work, but it's a no-brainer to know that it's supporting my health.
It's great. And at bottom, less work. Isn't that really just such an important part of being on track long term? My goodness. I mean, what's more important than that? Tony, anything you would add just in terms, and then we'll move on from the whole idea of phase 1 routines as part of phase 2?
Yeah, I think for me, I overlap a lot with both Kimberly and Adam, but I think the one thing that has saved me is sort of the discovery of things I love. You mentioned this earlier on, the stuff that you love that happens to be supportive. I try to give those items a lot of attention because I think being someone who was on diets most of my life, the thing that switched in HMR was the switch to lifestyle and enjoying things that allow me to be my healthiest. And so I try to spotlight those things, appreciate those things, and celebrate those things.
Yeah, beautiful, really great. So that main point of that 5 minutes right there, it's not to be overlooked. You want to keep up a high level of phase 1 behaviors, particularly as you're gradually introducing a wider variety of healthy foods into your dietary pattern. It just helps you to stay on track and feel more in control while you're learning these new skills. So with that, let's talk about really the crux of phase 2, which is helping people to practice and expand their skills in eating a healthy dietary pattern. So let's start with, for me personally, the fruits and veggies become just a foundational behavior, but for me, the superstar of my plate is often my lean protein. Anyone else feel that way? Boy.
Right there with you, Rick.
Yeah. So say a little bit more about lean proteins. What do people need to hear about this incredibly important food group as they're building skills in phase 2?
I think, it's an exciting thing to bring in. A lot of patients are working with some of these things already built into their HMR entrees, and now you get to prepare your own version of them, and it's exciting. It's highly nutritious. There's a ton of value behind it. I think it also, provides them an opportunity to create a new relationship with food, because I think when we work with patients, we want them preparing it. We see our HMR community group on Facebook light up with what they're putting on a plate. Keep that going in phase 2, be proud and take ownership of what you're putting on a plate. And, obviously the big thing is managing how much you're having. And we talk about fruits and vegetables and making that the most dominant thing on the plate, and you're set.
Yeah. I just love the flavor that you get when you really dive into this world of measured portions of lean protein. Tony, what comes to mind for you in that area?
Oh, whew. I'm excited, and now I'm getting hungry too. But I think of proteins, lean proteins, as just an untapped area for a lot of our clients. I think that when they start to discover the flavors that can come from, reasonable amounts of protein complemented by all these amazing veggies and whatnot, I feel like that's a revelation. And I do see the proteins as kind of a scaffolding, kind of a way to start to build new behaviors. Like Adam said, you start to visualize where they belong. That's why I love the transition process while they're learning, what's a reasonable portion, what can I work with here? And then it becomes this kind of personal way to manifest that with all these wonderful flavors, and having a little bit go a long way when it's, pumped up with lots of volume and fruits and veg. So I feel like that's one of those big aha moments that's so fun to watch in phase 2.
Totally agree. Yeah, it really is an ongoing process of discovery, isn't it? And again, you start with those measured lean proteins. There's just so much variety, so much flavor, more than people can even imagine. One of my first questions that I ask people when I'm helping them to transition to phase 2, I just pick one subcategory. Do you like fish? And when people say yes, I say, well, we're going to be able to come up with a new fish or preparation strategy for the next month without you repeating a meal. And that's just fish. It doesn't even talk about the lean poultry and the other sources of lean protein as well. Kim, anything else that you'd say in addition to what we've talked about here with the lean proteins?
Absolutely. I would say, it can be helpful to get a scale and really measure your lean proteins when you're first starting out, so you can get an idea of what a serving size is. And if you don't have a scale, then just using the palm of your hand to kind of gauge, the serving size. And lean proteins are a good way to start because proteins are a high satiety food. They keep you full for longer, and if you pair that with some non-starchy veggies with a lot of volume, you've got a nice, filling, satisfying meal. And it's different than what you're having in phase 1, but still low calorie.
Absolutely. Great. All right. So continuing to sort of peel this onion called a healthy dietary pattern. You're keeping up phase 1 behaviors, keep the decisions low, keep the structure in place. And we've just talked about lean proteins. Let's talk about another food group that just can add so much variety and taste and enjoyment to our meals and snacks. Grains. Measured portions of grains. I mean, what do we often hear when we talk to people who have lost weight, when we talk about adding grains in? This is an area that people can be a little bit scared of. Have you guys heard that? I'm sure many times through the years.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The concern is the fact that those grains, unlike the proteins, they somewhat spill onto the plate. It's easy to just eat more of these. So people tend to associate these with weight gain, but it doesn't have to be that way. Now, we talk about these as measured portions of grains. And of course, when we think about health, preferably whole grains, we'd like to really have people sample different types of whole grains to see which ones are palatable to them. What else would you say about using grains as the next addition to a healthy meal? Tony, whether it's what you talk about with your clients and members in the program or your own personal use, what comes to mind when you think about grains?
I feel like this is an area where there can be a huge paradigm shift in our clients because, like you said, I believe that, well, I think you used the term, these spill onto the plate. I think that a lot of people have a sense that some foods in this category have power over them. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a great opportunity for them to learn to take the charge out of those foods. And like Adam said earlier, change a relationship with these foods. And so here's where I think not just us as coaches, I think the class is such a great resource because they can relate and share strategies of how they've been able to manage, whether it's through portion control and or environmental control. Get a shift that goes on here so that, guess what? Rice isn't your Achilles heel anymore, or bread isn't, what takes you down every week, so shifting those paradigms. This is an area that I've seen people who don't even recognize themselves after that relationship starts to change, but it can be a long process and glacial at times, but we're giving them those first steps to begin to change that relationship.
Yeah, beautifully said. Kim or Adam, anything else you want to add about the grains, just to sort of embellish more the whole perspective that would be useful for people?
Yeah, I would just say, keeping in mind that there are grains in the entrees, so essentially you're making your own entree. I've even coached some patients to keep those entree containers and make sure that you could fit the grains and your lean protein in that container, but really just thinking about the proportions, and in the standard American diet, half the plate is the grain, and we're teaching you to do maybe a quarter of your plate grains.
That's right. And it's not like we ask people to eat these parsimonious little portion sizes of proteins and grains. We've talked about the importance of keeping up a high volume of fruits and vegetables. Portion control, you've both mentioned it, Tony and now Kim. This is important because there are calories in all of these foods, but we approach this through a philosophy of abundance as well, which is when you bulk up your plate with lots of fruits and vegetables, it becomes automatic portion control on your proteins and your grains. So again, the philosophy of abundance that we introduced to people in phase 1, we continue to practice that in phase 2, eating a lot of healthy foods to help you eat fewer of the less healthy, more calorie-filled foods. Adam, what else about grains from your perspective?
You hit it on the head earlier with whole, the word whole, and I think a lot of people think grains and they're thinking of their pre-HMR lifetime, like, oh my gosh, the 3 cups of angel hair pasta with my side of garlic bread. And I'm like, that's not what we're working on, and then, we explore things like, I think all of us, at least I've had a moment where I've had 3 cups of angel hair pasta. Otherwise, I wouldn't have used that as an example. But there's things like quinoa, brown rice. And, we just shared a fall harvest quinoa salad that has the quinoa more as the garnish to the plate, as opposed to the backbone of the plate. It's the recipe I think called for a 1/4 cup sprinkled over the top of it. And as you mentioned, when you have 3-4 cups of veggies in there, there's not much more room for more quinoa. So, I would say if you're nervous about it, explore a brand new avenue to approach grains. Don't go to the bread, even though there are whole grain options. Don't go to the pasta, even though there are whole wheat, options. Maybe you take a whole new experience with that grains, and I think it'll be less daunting.
Yeah, and a lot of people, may turn up their noses at the idea of the whole grains. Tastes are learned. We see this all the time, don't we, in this work? I mean, how many times have you had people who are eating huge levels of fruits and vegetables when you first started working with them said, I'm just not big on fruits and vegetables. I don't like these. I mean, this happens all the time. Tastes are learned, and it can happen with grains as well, whole grains. I will just leave the whole grains. What comes to mind is just the research that's continuing to grow out there. There are the obvious health benefits of whole grains. They're almost like miracle foods. They're more like fruits and vegetables in terms of the health benefits than they are like processed or refined grains. But recently, a couple of different studies came out within, I think, 2 weeks' time about weight management. And, we know that countries that eat more whole grains tend to have lower body weights. But now we're seeing research, and there seem to be 2 things that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. One is that with the whole grains, which retain so much of what's good in those foods, the fiber not being the least of it, are more filling than the refined and the processed grains. So you can get filled up but with fewer calories. But then people also, with that fiber, tend to absorb fewer of the calories. So there really have 2 mechanisms at play here to really encourage people to have an open mind about the whole grains, obviously for the health management benefits, but also for some weight management advantages that whole grains confer as well. All right, so we're talking about really the big thrust of what we do in phase 2. We help people to expand and continue to practice a varied, healthy dietary pattern. We've talked about lean proteins. We've talked about grains. What other foods are worth mentioning here in terms of part of a successful phase 2 experience?
As a dietitian, I'd like to chime in because I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about healthy fats and
Good.
Also the reputation, that especially a weight loss and weight management program would have automatically when you talk about fat. So I mean, I almost find as a health educator, you have to build a bridge to your client first so that they know, look, fats belong, fats are important. They play a huge role in, as Kimberly said, the satiety, but also, of course, with, vitamin absorption and a myriad other things that we need these for. And of course, most of our clients, and maybe ourselves included, have had that fat phobia time in our lives. And we also know from a calorie contribution standpoint what we're working with. So I think that dance is really important, to engage in that with your clients, have the conversations. And as people coming into phase 2 know that this will be part of the milieu, it will be part of what we work with, and to try to figure that out and carefully help our clients, work with those and change that relationship as well.
Absolutely. Again, beautifully said. Kim, anything else you want to add about healthy fats and incorporating them into an overall healthy dietary pattern?
Yeah, so just backing up what Tony said, also including some low-fat dairy. I think that can be a nice part of a healthy diet. And also, and if you're not, if you're lactose intolerant, then maybe some dairy replacements.
Absolutely. The nutrition research, largely got it right several decades ago, but the one area that really has, with the science that's come out, we really have modified and nuanced our whole view of this, and that is the whole world of fats. Yes, as you say, Tony, they have more calories per gram, so you have to be careful with them, but there are healthy fats and there are less healthy fats. So part of our goal, largely because they add so much flavor to our diet, is to help people to incorporate healthy fats into their routines as part of, again, an overall healthy dietary pattern. Adam, anything before we move off of that on the healthy fats?
Yeah, no, there's just a lot of, obviously there's a lot of options out there, and I think it's much like our protein and grain conversation. There's a thought process behind what you bring into the house, how you're going to use it. One of my strategies is slivered almonds versus whole almonds.
Yeah.
You'll never find me in the living room eating slivered almonds out of a bag, and they're a great garnish to like overnight oats, and I can sprinkle them on a salad, and that's a healthy fat I can manage in the house, but there's certainly others that I can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. I have a little spout that allows me to use olive oil in very measured portions, as opposed to how it's so easy to have it pour out of the typical bottle. And I find it's very little olive oil. It just seems to add so much to my ability to prepare things the way that I enjoy them most. Okay, going once, going twice. Anything else on healthy fats, or should we move on? All right. Let's do a fast round here. A couple of quick ones. Environmental control, so important in phase 1. Basically, to paraphrase it, limiting your exposure to high calorie tempting foods to make it easier to choose the lower calorie options. So Tony, is environmental control still important in phase 2?
Let me think about that. That was a nice trick question, Rick. Yes, I think it is not only as important, I think it's more important now, because now the door to other foods has been cracked open, and we're dealing with human tendencies and, a lot of things that we need to learn. And so what I love about the shift in my head in environmental control in P2 is, as you said earlier, the abundance component. Like, I like to look at what are the things now that I can build with, and build into my routines. And again, having been on diets throughout my life, I feel liberated from the deprivation mindset. And I feel like P2, when you go in carefully, methodically, all the things we've said before, it can be kind of a junket. You go bit by bit and find things that you can include that make for great flavored foods that help you manage your weight. But it's this shift in, at least for me, it was a shift in my mind to what are the things I can bring in. So additive EC became just a huge muscle to build. But of course, the backdrop is always, okay, let's be honest with ourselves, what still needs to be honored from a subtractive standpoint. So I think EC is threaded throughout the entire journey.
Absolutely. That additive EC or additive environmental control, just to put it simply, making sure the foods that you want to eat and that will support your goals, that you have them and they're in your environments. That's a big one for me. That takes care of so much. When I make sure I'm doing my shopping and have all of the foods, all of the foods that will support my healthy eating routines, it's just so much easier. Kim, what else would you say about the importance of environmental control, whether it's additive, bringing positive, healthy foods in, or limiting exposure to tempting foods through subtractive EC?
I would say if you don't control your environment, it will control you. It's if you put yourself in a tempting situation, and knowing yourself and what situation you can put yourself in is really important. And also, as you said, adding things to your environment. So making sure that you're prepping your food and having things available. For me, just working from home, I've come to that realization again. Going into the office, I was prepping my meals every day to bring to work. And here, I've had to make sure that I do that too, and I don't leave it up to chance and for what my husband is making, for lunch, because he's here too. It's so important to control your environment.
Yeah, I'm laughing because your environment controlling you. It doesn't matter who you are, does it? Whoever you are, whatever your history of managing your weight successfully or not, this is just a human condition. If you've got tempting food and it's in your environment and you're trying to not eat it, you're probably going to lose more of those battles than you're going to win them. Adam, anything before we move off environmental control?
Yeah, the two I always think of are people and places, and I think Kim just hammered the environments, and and I mentioned this earlier, create your own food. I think a lot of people in phase one would say for the last 3 months of phase one, I made everything. They prepare their food. And that's one that you want to be mindful of, because as Tony mentioned, the options go, oh, maybe I can get chicken at this restaurant. And then it comes back to Kimberly's point, you're putting yourself in now a different environment. And then the other one that I think is kind of a hidden one is, when patients first start or people start the program, they have conversations with friends and family. So my part 2 is people. As soon as somebody sees you bite into that chicken breast, that conversation of, you're like a lot of diets out there, you're done with it. And you almost have to re-engage those conversations the second time, like you're starting the program over again, because that leads to more conversations at that crucial point, which we're obviously spending time talking about.
Gosh, that's such an important point that you bring up. For some reason, well, I think it makes sense. Many people will hesitate to advocate for themselves in this area. If there's this feeling like I'm imposing on others. What are your thoughts on that, Tony, in terms of just sort of reinforcing what Adam's brought up here?
Yeah, actually, I just got kind of excited about 2 things that were just said by Kim and Adam. If I could start with that and then I think circle around the people and the places concept within the environmental control context. What struck me too is that I think we're talking now about variables, things that are in the mix. And when you have folks around you who think now things are different for you, what I think we're faced with ourselves and our clients is this idea of how do I manage those variables? And I think this is where, as humans, we sometimes fall into the binary sort of all or nothing place. Oh, yeah. And I think that is another reason why P2 is so hard for folks, because it's in the gray, it's in that middle zone, and that's uncomfortable, especially initially. So when you two were talking about people and places and whatnot, I was thinking that what I see is not just myself but clients as well, who maybe find themselves biting into that chicken breast or whatever it is, and someone saying, oh, now you're eating other stuff, Then when the environments become more challenging, I think we have to always ask that question, is like, what is the best I can do with the environment I'm in and the tools that I have, right? So if we're challenging ourselves to at least figure, do some problem solving versus fall back, because Adam, when you gave that scenario, I picture it's sometimes hard to speak up for yourself. And it's sometimes easier to say, oh, what the heck, and then we're back to old behaviors. But if we tolerate that discomfort and go, wait a second, there might be something I can do here that's in the middle. And that's where I think P2 lives, is in the middle.
Yes. We
learn that new skill of identifying sort of those not A++ answers that we might be trying for, but something that will give us the best scenario possible. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
It does. I mean, so much productivity comes from just recognizing that if I can make some changes to the environment, be it actual foods or a conversation with people to support me in that endeavor, boy, is that a productive action to take, because the environment, you said it, Kim, the environment will control you if you're not controlling it. Really, really well said.
I'd add another thing though. I think you said conversations with others. I would add on a conversation with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That other piece, which again is strange for some, new to others, and yet I feel like it's so critical.
Yeah, I think a particularly fertile conversation with oneself, I know you will agree with this, Tony, is the idea of revisiting why you're trying to lose weight and maintain a lower body weight in the first place. Those reasons are there for everybody, and they are compelling, but sometimes they're a bit elusive when you're in the trenches and maybe your environment isn't supporting you. I might have people start the conversation with yourself with, what is my why? And really reset that foundation. And then from there, start the whatever problem solving needs to happen. Okay, great. So environmental control is still important. Another quick hit here, maybe a little quicker than the environmental control was. Physical activity. Adam, is physical activity important in phase 2?
Absolutely. It's from a weight management, it even becomes that much more important. We've done some math on what the human body kind of needs to maintain weight, and especially when you get people that lose 50, 100, 150 pounds, their maintenance calories, they're not carrying a 100-pound sandbag on them anymore. So the activity even becomes that much more crucial. The great part about it, you're not carrying the 100 pounds, so physical activity should be easier. That's what I always like to say, to put it straightforward. But it's going to play a bigger role, in keeping you in a healthy range that you want to be. And the great thing is, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Walking is amazing for anyone. And of course, it can domino effect to strength training, to yoga, to running a marathon. But there's just obviously a lot of things that are out there, and definitely people should keep that at the forefront of their behaviors, as well as the food stuff. Yeah,
I would just make a quick calorie point, and then Kim or Tony invite you to talk about maybe some of the cognitive emotional benefits of physical activity. If you're doing the HMR program minimum, 2,000 calories or more in a week, call it 300 a day, you might look at that and say, gee, 300, I mean, how much of a difference is that? But think about how long you want to manage your weight for. I mean, for the rest of your life. And 300 calories on average every day is often the difference between that being what might have been a weight gain day, it might actually be a weight loss day. And those differences add up significantly over time. And the research is so clear how important maintaining your physical activity is after losing weight as part of managing your weight more successfully over time. So Kim, what about the mental benefits of physical activity? Do these play a role in phase 2 as well?
Absolutely. Physical activity really helps to heighten the mood, and it helps you to deal with stress, and stress can have a huge impact on weight management. It can keep us from stress eating those foods that don't support our long-term goals. And another thing I'd like to add is that physical activity tends to have a synergetic effect on what we eat. So if we are doing the work to do the physical activity, we're more likely to eat the foods that are on our plan.
Absolutely. Reinforces everything that you're up to commitment-wise. Tony, what do you add to that?
These guys covered most of it. I would just add one word to the synergistic effect you mentioned, and that is protective. I feel like it really can serve as such a protective, whether that's behavioral or otherwise. And I think that the other thing is, for me, the success cycle behavior. For some of us, it's that lifeline. It's when things feel impossible. Well, I could always do something, whether it's 5 minutes of PA, and what that does to even a day that just feels like it was trashed. You could still do something PA-wise that will connect you to the success cycles. And I just feel like it's always there in our back pocket, and it's just a gift.
really is. And you said it, even if it is 5 or 10 minutes, that can make a difference. And the difference is maybe not on a calorie level, but on an emotional and commitment level. So great stuff. Environmental control, it continues to be important in phase 2. Physical activity continues to be an essential imperative behavior as well. All right, well, we are right at the end here. I want to have us close with just a couple of thoughts from each of you. As coaches, if you thought about the importance of participating in phase 2, what rises to the top in terms of your reason? Now, Kim, I'll just start with you. Why is phase 2 so important for people to join and participate actively in?
Because it takes a long time to change lifestyle. You know, you grow up with a certain behavior around food and exercise, and it takes a long time to change those and to make the healthy lifestyle habits stick, you know, and you have to go through all the holidays throughout the year and, you know, really make it a habit. So we recommend that you stay in phase 2 for at least a year, you know, and I've had patients in phase 2 for a lot longer. I had a phase 2 class for 7 years, and there were people in that class that were there longer than me, you know, so that accountability, someone to step on the scale for, and to, you know, just to have the class support and the coach support, I think is very, very helpful.
Sure is. Adam, top reason. I know there are many, but the top one that comes to mind for you about why phase 2 is such an important part of people's long-term success.
I think we've talked a lot of the skills, you know, obviously on this call of what they're going to develop, but I think from a more of a manifestation of what happens inside your mind when you live out a healthy lifestyle, and to see how liberating of an experience that can be. And I often have to remind people, like, the life before HMR was the punishment. You know, this is the enjoyment, and to really embrace the journey, because there's no finish line. You know, if you want, this is a forever thing that you, so, you know, I know we live in a society of instant gratification, so slow down, enjoy the ride, you know, and celebrate those non-scale victories like we talked about a lot too.
Great. I love it. Really, really good. Tony.
I would just add that I think historically, most people, when they lose weight, the minute they have met their goal or gotten close, it's a disconnect, right? It's like, well, that's done. What about now? You know, and typically that what about now is slowly or quickly going back to where we were behaviorally and health-wise. And I feel like P2 is, the word I would put out there is connect, because it allows us to connect with keep connected with a coach, keep connected with a great program. Every week there's a forum, you know, you have a class to come to brainstorm and learn from people that are in the same boat. And I think that for me, I tell my class all the time, I am the facilitator, but this is the only forum for me in my life where everyone gets it. There's the shorthand, and it's an incredible gift. But I feel like whether it's connecting to the program, connecting to our why, connecting to ourselves, I just feel like P2 gives us that connection that in most programs is where the disconnect occurs.
Yep. Support. Really, you're speaking about support. Kim and Adam, you mentioned skills. I mean, this really is at bottom what it is all about. It's not just a decision. You need the decision to start, but these are skills. It's a process. It's a practice. And that's coming back to what you just said, Tony. The support that phase 2 provides helps you keep up the practice. Okay, last question for you. I'm going to pivot here a little bit. We're all role models here in that we all practice the healthy behaviors of the program as part of being in the program. What is a personal insight? It might even have occurred to you as an epiphany about your own work in phase 2, because essentially we're all in phase 2. So Adam, what have you had any insights that again rise above the rest in terms of being in value around phase 2 from a personal perspective?
Absolutely. You know, just because we're the coaches doesn't mean we're dealing with the same struggles our patients and clients are dealing with. And, you know, and I'm at peace with some of those, you know, that I'm not, you know, you won't find me here. And the one that when, this question is asked, I always think like, I am a human garbage disposal if I am around foods that are straight finger to mouth, and we talked environment control, and I don't put myself in those. There's no chips in the house, like we eat at the dinner table just about every night, and I've really come to terms with, if I want a mindful relationship with food, my food needs to be on a plate.
Right.
But it's not saying you wouldn't find me at a party next to a snacking table, like that's my coach, so I've come to terms with that one, and I'm aware of that one, and it's okay. And that's where I think, people don't have to be perfect in every scenario. And I think, having some peace with some of the things that are just a challenge and you don't want to face, that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Again, I said it before, it's very human. We like good tasting food, and no judgment about that. Kim, any insights for you as just a personal health role model around the ongoing work that phase 2 really represents?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think a personal epiphany was that I really need to plan. I need to plan out my meals on a daily basis. I need to plan my shopping list. I need to plan before I go to a restaurant and what I'm going to have. That really supports me for success. And, a lot of people don't want to plan. It's, the non-glamorous part of our program to sit down and think about it and plan. But for me, it'll make or break my success with weight management.
Absolutely. And just a testimony to how difficult the environment is. No planning is probably going to lead to more calories than any of us want. Tony, how about you in terms of, again, personal insight?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned I've been here for 20 years. I think when I took this job, I was like, I'll see how this goes. I was a short timer historically with my other jobs. And I realized quickly with HMR that this was a journey. And I embraced that initially as a journey as a dietitian and health educator to help my clients. And what I have realized is that embedded in that, this has been my own journey, and it will be forever. This is lifelong, which means I'm going to feel proud some days and disappointed others. And I'm a huge lover of roller coasters. And this is the main roller coaster with my health I've ever been on. And I just allow myself for those ups and downs.
So well said. That leads right into mine, which is essentially the same thing. I have through the years really come to realize that my health and the healthy lifestyle practices that I enjoy are something I'm always going to have to work at. The environment doesn't allow things to be as automatic as we would like, but I'm at peace with that. And I've sort of accepted that it's almost become part of just who I am. The fact that there's that big bad environment out there that wants me to weigh more than I want to and not exercise and not eat fruits and vegetables. And that's who I'm up against. And that's cool. That's the game I'm playing, and I'm going to keep playing it. So that's pretty much saying what you just said there, Tony. How about this as we end this? And I want to, just before I ask this final thing, thank you all for your time and really for the commitment and the contribution that you make to the people that you work with in the program. It's an extraordinary thing that you do. This work is a privilege, and I know you all feel the same way about that. So thank you for that. But as we finish here, this was your idea, Tony. As it relates to phase 2 and your whole work and commitment to practice a healthy lifestyle in this unsupportive environment, Tony, what is a song or a soundtrack that captures that experience for you?
Well, I have a million songs, but I will go with the theme in my session here today is my buddy Tina Turner, You Better Be Good to Me.
You be good to yourself with your commitment. That's great.
That's what I mean. Be good to yourself on this journey is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And being on the journey is being good to yourself. Really. It's kind of a meta way of looking at that. Kim, what about you? Do you have a song that comes to mind that sort of captures what you're up to?
I love this question. So when I first started HMR, I had a song pop into my mind when I first learned about the gap. So I am a Generation Xer, and I loved alternative 80s music as a youngster. And my first unsupervised concert was the Thompson Twins, and they have a song called The Gap. And there's a line in the song that says, "Break the line, chew the fat, we're going to fall into the gap," which happens to all of us all the time. We're going to fall into the gap on occasion. And like Tony brought up, you have to just forgive yourself and then make a plan to turn it around so that, that falling out of your plan doesn't derail your weight loss efforts.
Great. That's great. The gap, it just is everywhere. The gap between a healthy lifestyle and the behaviors that would support our weight and health and what the cultural norms are, what a gap there is, and it just keeps getting wider. Adam, what song comes to mind for you?
I wish I'd have went with more of a lighthearted one, but I had to pick John Bon Jovi. It's My Life. It's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. And kind of never really. I mean, I had to think about this one, Tony, because I'm not as big into the music stuff, but I really thought of how I kind of approach life, and that one finally came to me. And there's so many examples. Like, I had an '89 Ford Probe, but when I was 16, I beat that thing into the ground. And it's like, you can get a new car, you can't get a new body. And I think it really humbles you to realize you got one life to live. And one of my favorite quotes is, you shouldn't fear death, you should fear a life not lived. So that stuck with me. So appreciate every moment.
It's really great. So I want to again thank all of you. I will have us go out on a song that I think sort of captures the way I feel about this. It's a journey. Seize it with both hands. Don't expect to be perfect. The point that you made earlier, Tony. We all fall down at times, but it all boils down to, can you stay in action and can you pick yourself back up again? So with that, feel free to dance in your seats.
Oh, it's I hear it though.
Thanks. Thank you.
Oh.
Good day.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.